Good evening and welcome back to another episode of the Healthwise Show. I am your host, Dr. Monique Lescott, in collaboration with ZIZ and the St. Kitts Nevis Medical and Dental Association. Thank you for tuning in. I have here with me tonight Dr. Tishima Browne. She is our newest addition to the hosting of the Healthwise Show. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Browne this evening. It's my pleasure to have you at my side this evening. At some point in time, she's going to have her own show, but for this evening, she's going to join us tonight. As I introduce you, she's going to be my co-host. So as always, we have a very interesting topic for you guys, for us to unpack. And I'm sure everyone by now would have heard of the Hantavirus and the Ebola virus, and we're here now to discuss this evening, why are they such global threats? We're going to take a few short commercial breaks, and when we come back, we'll elaborate a lot more on the topic.
Looking for a new vehicle? Horsford's Automotive Division has exactly what you need. Reliable performance, modern design, and a team committed to getting you on the road with confidence. From everyday drives to exciting upgrades, quality and service come standard. Ready to refresh your home? Visit Ashley Furniture Home Store at Horsford's. Discover statement pieces, stylish accents, and comfort designed to elevate your space instantly. Planning a project? The Building Center provides premium paints mixed to perfection and expert guidance every step of the way. Bring your ideas to life with ease. Automotive, home style, building essentials, all in one trusted destination. Make it simple. Make it smart. Experience everything Horsford's has to offer today. Try Horsford's first.
Good evening and welcome back. As I mentioned before, our topic this evening will be the Hantavirus and Ebola virus, and we're going to discuss and unpack why are they such global threats. Joining me this evening is my co-host, Dr. Tishima Browne, general practitioner at the emergency room currently at the Joseph and France General Hospital. She's going to have her own show her own hosting going forward. She's our newest addition to the show, and I just wanted to have her introduce herself before we go into the meat of the discussion.
Okay, I am Dr. Tishima Browne. I am currently working at the Joseph and France General Hospital at the Accident and Emergency Department. So I would have had my medical training at the Latin American Medical School. Since graduating in 2023, I've been working in the local healthcare system. I am someone who's very passionate about public health education and raising awareness for a lot of diseases that we don't normally hear about. And that is why I'm here today, to help raise awareness for Hantavirus and Ebola virus.
Thank you very much, Dr. Browne. So we're going to go right into my portion of our presentation this evening. I'm going to discuss the Ebola virus. And so I'm going to have our technicians go right into the slides.
Ebola.
Okay. So the Ebola virus, why is it such a global threat? So I'm sure many of us would have heard on the news by now that there has been a recent outbreak in Western Africa. And even though Western Africa is ways away from where we are in the Caribbean, we still have to be on guard because the culture of the world right now, people traveling, people don't stay stationary. So whenever there is a threat anywhere in the globe, it can be a threat to us as well if we are not mindful. And I'm sure we would have remembered, I think back in 2016, there was another Ebola outbreak, and now we're experiencing an outbreak again generating almost from the same region, but this time it's a different strain of the virus, and we're going to discuss what that means. So for a brief overview, so the Ebola virus disease, or EVD, is caused by viruses in the Ebola virus genus, genevus, of the Floridae family. So 6 species have been identified, with 4 known to cause illnesses in human, because from my research, Ebola is usually reservoired in animals, and so it's out of the 6, not all of them affect humans. And so we have the Zaire Ebola virus. Technician, we can go to the third slide. Yes, so that the audience can keep up. So we have the Zaire Ebola virus. That was actually responsible for the 2016 very deadly outbreak where many persons lost their lives. The general public and the health workers especially were among the statistics of persons that lost their lives. And we have the Sudan, we have the Bundibugyo Ebola virus. This is now the current strain that is threatening the West African region right now, and that is the name of the current epidemic that's currently happening as of what I was reading and researching. As of the 27th of May, the WHO declared, they made it known to the world that this was a strain of Ebola virus that is currently threatening the West African region. And we have the Hantavirus Ebola virus. So we also have other 2, the Reston virus and the Bombali virus. These are known to cause diseases. These are not known to cause diseases in humans, but just animals strictly. So we're going to continue. There are 4 primary Ebola virus species known to cause diseases in humans. So the current one, the BDBV, or the Bundibugyo virus, the rare strain responsible for the current 2026 Central Africa outbreak. It's currently lacking in a targeted vaccines, which means, I guess, by the time this epidemic is over, just like the last one, they would have tried to come up with a vaccine. There is a vaccine for the outbreak that the world experienced back in 2016, the Zaire, or the EBOV, the Zaire virus. They have a vaccine. So that's the most common and lethal strain. It was responsible, like I said, for the massive West African epidemic, and is the only strain with the approved vaccines and therapeutics. So the Sudan virus, or the SUDV, known to cause previous outbreaks primarily in Uganda. And so we also have the Hantavirus virus, or the TAFV, a rare strain with a very few recorded human cases. Before we go any further, I'm sure persons would have heard the Ebola virus traditionally would have been called a hemorrhagic fever. So the symptoms for the hemorrhagic fever, the Ebola symptoms, would be typically the incubation period can be between 2 to 21 days after exposure, averaging 8 to 10 days. Early signs resemble the influenza or the flu and include fever-like symptoms. We have fatigue, muscle pain, headache, and sore throat. Now, if anyone is familiar with the dengue fever, some of these symptoms almost sound like dengue. So, which brings me to my next point, and we're going to see it further down in the slide, that in order to properly diagnose Ebola, one of the only ways to diagnose Ebola is through diagnostic means to the lab. And we're going to take a short break and elaborate when we come back.
Swipe your card, live your life. National Bank life is nice. You can spend it when you want it, how you like, where you like. Swipe your card, live your life. National Bank life is nice. Home or away, any time of the day. Credit Dr. Debbie, right in your pocket. Your national bank card, so many benefits. Oh yeah, the choice is yours. Just come and embrace it. Live your life your way with purchases big or small. Mango, nuts, red fruit and all. You can spend it when you want it. How you like, where you like. Swipe your card, live your life. National Bank life is nice, nice, nice.
Good evening and welcome back. My name is Dr. Monique Lescott. Our topic for this evening is Hantavirus and Ebola virus. Why are they such global threats? I have with me my co-host, Dr. Tishima Browne. I'm going to cover the Ebola virus segment of this presentation. So we're going to continue our elaboration or discussion on the symptoms of Ebola virus. Previously, I was discussing the incubation period, which would be between 2 to 21 days after exposure. And might I add, I'm not sure if persons know this, but one of the reasons why Ebola was such a big issue back in 2016 is because typically the virus still is active even within a dead human body, I think up until 72 hours after death, which makes burial and burial preparations in areas that might have or may not have the enough sanitation to keep up with the amount of deaths. In Africa, they have different traditional burial practices, and so it was very easy for the disease to end up in small villages and small provinces. And when the persons would have succumbed to the illnesses, their traditional burial practices significantly increased the rate at which the disease itself progressed. And so sometimes I try to, and I'm speaking with my doctor host here right now, when I see these things in the global news, I try to place it in a local format. We don't have a lot of traditional burial practices like overseas, but in terms of how our health system would be able to maneuver or to even take on such a disease that's very easy to what you call that, it's very contagious. So when I place that disease in a local framework, I still think that we would be in a significant distress when it comes to trying to control the way the disease is spread. But that was just one thing definitely. I noted. The reason why it would have probably spread the way it did in West Africa or in those regions partly is because of their traditional customs and practices when it comes to burial. And it's noteworthy to mention that the disease itself can remain active within human bodily fluids and all of that up until 72 hours after the passing of the person. So the person is still very much lethal even in the death state. Okay. So as the disease progresses, you have severe symptoms may develop, such as you have vomiting, diarrhea, rash, impaired liver and kidney function, and internal and external bleeding. That's very serious. And apart from that, we don't have a vaccine for almost all of the strains. We only have a formulated and approved vaccine for one.
And that would be the previous strain.
And that was the previous strain, not even the strain that we are experiencing this epidemic with now. So in some cases, neurological complications like confusion, seizures, and encephalitis occurs. So mortality rates vary by virus species and outbreak conditions, ranging from 25% to 90% survival with an average of around 50%. So it is noteworthy again to kind of make mention that if 100 persons contract Ebola, it's statistically expected that at least half of them won't survive.
Can you imagine that?
So on our small island, with our small population, we cannot afford a risk of even a threat of such. And so this is a picture of the way how they have to handle an Ebola patient after the patient has expired. Even in death, you have to be in full hazmat suits, and the burial has to be coordinated with health professionals to control the spread. That's very serious, if you ask me. Very serious. What do you think?
Very, very serious. I hope it never crosses this border.
As a emergency room doctor, can you imagine if we have such an outbreak coming to our shores? Can you imagine the influx, the overwhelm, and probably how many hours of work are you guys doing now? 12-hour shifts? They might probably have
hours.
18 or 20-hour shifts.
I don't even want to think about it, right?
So it's very imperative that I put that into perspective, because I know there was a bit of pushback a few days ago when health officials, and I don't want to touch on any controversial topics, but when I sat and I look back and I know what can happen and what could potentially be at risk, although I felt so much compassion for the passengers that came, because I'm an avid traveler myself, I could imagine that would have been a huge inconvenience. But I honestly saw why our health professionals made such a move. I don't think we're ready. To the public, I don't think we're ready. That's just my opinion. I just don't think we're ready. So the transmission of Ebola. So the Ebola spreads through direct contact with blood, body fluids, or tissues of infected humans or animals, including urine, saliva, sweat, vomit, feces, breast milk, amniotic fluid, and semen. So basically speaking, even if you're in just close proximity to someone, this disease can find an opportunity to infect persons, which means almost like COVID, you're going to have what you call that? When they had this, you had to have space, and you're going to have to have quarantine. Social distancing. You're going to have quarantine. This would be like COVID all over again, but maybe 10 times worse, because we're going to have to be extremely strict in terms of contamination issues and what's not. We will have to be very strict about that. So contaminated objects like clothing, bedding, or medical equipment can also transmit the virus. Transmission occurs primarily during care of a sick individual or handling of the deceased body, particularly during traditional burial practices. Ebola is not airborne under normal conditions, but that's still not something I'm willing to even risk, even though it's not airborne. Statistics. So, since the last update, the dated 21st May this year, 2026, 160 persons had suspected cases included, and this is in the the Democratic Republic of Congo. 160 persons were suspected, and including 147 deaths have been reported from that region. As of May 27, the total confirmed cases was actually 125. So it was 160 suspected and 125 cases were confirmed. That's a huge amount of persons in such a short space of time. And what experts are saying is one of the ways in which the disease actually was jumping from animals to humans is because of their diet. Some of them, I think, in that region, they eat what they call wild meat. And some of these animals, like the bat, I think it's a fruit bat, I think it's a delicacy in some places. From what I was reading, they're suspecting that that is how some of these epidemics are being started in some of those regions. So even though I don't feel like us here in the Caribbean, we might not feel like it's an imminent threat, because apart from the fact that we don't have the same burial practices, etc., we don't eat the same, and so certain things is not endemic to here, but we really don't want to take that risk. Like, I really don't want to take that risk. Doctor, do you want to take that risk?
I don't want to take that risk at all.
So 106 suspected cases, including, this is in Uganda, including 223 deaths have been reported from 13 health zones, and this is in the north provinces of the Democratic Republic of Congo. So 16 confirmed cases have been reported among health care officials to date. So the epidemiological and laboratory investigations are ongoing to reclassify all suspected cases and deaths reported in the Democratic Republic of Congo, which means they have to do contact tracing. It's a very tedious work to do contact tracing anyone that would have been on the front line for COVID. It takes a tremendous amount of manpower, concentration, dedication, and a lot of sacrificing of time to process the data, to collect the data and to process the data. It takes a huge amount of manpower and a lot of investment. So that's just where we're at. We're going to take a few short moments to pay some bills, and we'll be right back.
Here are your Horsford's Value Mart IGA Blue Tag Special.
Running May 28th to June 10th.
IGA or Essential Everyday Mac and Cheese, just $2.99. Juicy Juice, $13.99. Langus Cranberry Juice Cocktails, $11.99. Lay Stack Chips, $8.99. Country Crock Margarine, $11.99. And Culinary Circle Pizza, just $24.99. And now,
our value deals. Essential Everyday Cornflakes, $9.99. Nabisco Chips Ahoy Cookies, $17.99. Almond Almond Deodorant, $8.99. The Colgate Toothpaste, $6.99. Essential Everyday Salad Dressing, $10.99. Essential Everyday Peanuts, $8.99. Shop smart, shop value mart. Tell them in Spanish.
sea listo y haga sus compras aquí en Value Mart.
Good evening and welcome back. My name is Dr. Monique Lescott. I'm your host this evening, and with me I have my lovely co-host, Dr. Tishima Browne of the Joseph and Franz General Hospital Emergency Room Doctor with me, and we're going to continue our presentation on the Ebola virus. Why is it such a global threat? We're going to move into the diagnostic aspect of the epidemic. So the diagnosis relies on laboratory testing, including the PCR to detect viral and RNA, and the antigen and the ELISA antibody tests. Early symptoms can mimic other diseases, like I told you, which I mentioned before. Dengue is more endemic. I guess dengue is endemic also in Africa as well, but more so in the Caribbean as well, more than any other diseases that you would have found, like malaria and what's not. We don't really have malaria and typhoid. So I can imagine if we were to, and like I said, I like to put these things into a local context. If we were to have some sort of outbreak here, I'm almost certain some persons might mistake some of these symptoms for something as simple as dengue, when it's actually way more serious, like a hemorrhagic fever,
or any other flu, like say,
yes, and you might think you have the flu.
Exactly.
So early symptoms can mimic other diseases like malaria and typhoid, making laboratory confirmation essential. So the current Ebola strain driving the major 2026 outbreak in the Democratic Republic of Congo and Uganda, like I said, is the Bondigo, I cannot pronounce this, virus, or the BDBV. So for treatment, next slide please. So there is no universal cure, but supportive care. That is for this particular epidemic now, the BBVD. There's no treatment, like I mentioned, no universal cure, but supportive care significantly improves survival. So this includes hydration, electrolyte replacement, oxygen therapy, blood pressure support, and treatment of secondary infections. For the Zaire Ebola virus, 2 FDA-approved monoclonal antibody treatments are available. That's the Imazed, or a combination of 3 antibodies, and the Ibagna, a single antibody administered intravenously. That sounds like a vaccine. Okay? So experimental antiviral drugs are under investigation for the other Ebola species. So we're going to head right into our personality spotlight. We're going to come back and we can elaborate more as we move into the Hantavirus presentation aspect of the show tonight. So we're going to have our personality spotlight. She is Miss Lucinda Monzak.
Our medical personality is Nurse Lucinda Monzak. Lucinda Monzak is a community nurse manager stationed at the Sadler's Health Center. She graduated from the Clarence Fitzroy Brand College with an associate's degree in nursing. She later gained a diploma in the Post-Basic Midwifery program and received the Dr. Derek Jeffers Award. Ms. Monzak started her professional career as a nursing attendant at the Mary Charles Hospital. She was then transferred to the Molyneux Health Center. She was recently chosen to be one of the maternal care navigator nurses who care for antenatal clients in her district community. She recently completed her bachelor's degree in public health at Monroe University, New York. She has also been recognized with 2 recent honors, the Most Dedicated Community Nurse Award and Innovation for Health Promotion Award. She believes that each patient should be treated with respect and dignity, no matter what class or creed, as this brings life and mental wellness to each individual. Our medical personality is Nurse Lucinda Monzak.
Looking for a new vehicle? Horsford's automotive division has exactly what you need. Reliable performance, modern design, and a team committed to getting you on the road with confidence. From everyday drives to exciting upgrades, quality and service come standard. Ready to refresh your home? Visit Ashley Furniture Home Store at Horsford's. Discover statement pieces, stylish accents, and comfort designed to elevate your space instantly. Planning a project? The Building Center provides premium paints mixed to perfection and expert guidance every step of the way. Bring your ideas to life with ease. Automotive, home style, building essentials, all in one trusted destination. Make it simple. Make it smart. Experience everything Horsford's has to offer today. Try Horsford's first.
Good evening and welcome back. My name is Dr. Monique Lescott, your host. It is with great pleasure now I hand the show over to Dr. Tishima Browne so she can present to you her presentation and her segment of the hantavirus. Take it away.
Good evening, everyone. Like she said, I am Dr. Tishima Browne, and I want to thank you guys so much for staying with us. So tonight, the broader discussion is on hantavirus and Ebola and why these viruses can become global threats. For my part, I'll be discussing hantavirus, what it is, how it spreads, why it has recently been in the news, and what does it mean for us here in St. Kitts and Nevis. So before I begin, I want to make it clear that this discussion is not meant to create panic or fear. It is for public awareness purposes. It has an educational purpose, and it is to help us understand the risk that we have here. And so I don't want anybody to panic when they hear about some of the stuff that I'll be discussing in my presentation. So let's start. So the first question that we have to ask is, what is hantavirus? So hantavirus is not just one virus, it is actually a group of viruses, and they are mainly carried by rodents. Different hantaviruses are found in different parts of the world. Some are more commonly linked to kidney disease, especially in parts of Asia and Europe, while others can affect the lung and the heart, particularly in the Americas. So for the general public, the simplest way to understand it is that hantavirus is a rare infection linked mainly to rodent exposure. So it is a zoonotic disease, meaning that it passes from animal to humans. So for many years, most people had never heard of hantavirus because infections were considered relatively uncommon and usually linked to very specific environmental exposure. Historically, people associated hantavirus with things like abandoned cabins, rodent-infested buildings, or rural environments where persons came into contact with contaminated dust. So what has changed in recent years is that outbreaks are now connected to international travel, including cruise ship travel. And they have brought global attention to diseases like hantavirus. And that's one of the reasons we're discussing it this evening. So let's look at hantavirus through the years. So this slide shows us some of the key moments in the historical background of hantavirus. Although many people are only now hearing about it because of recent news reports, illnesses compatible with hantavirus infections were described centuries ago in historical Chinese medical writings. Then, during the Korean War in the 1950s, thousands of United Nations soldiers developed a serious fever illness. That outbreak helped bring the disease to the attention of Western medicine. Later, in 1978, Hantavirus was identified near the Hantan River in South Korea. That discovery helped scientists understand the connection between these viruses and their rodent hosts. In the Americas, the Andes virus, which is a type of hantavirus, was first described in Argentina in 1995 and later identified in Chile. That is important because Andes virus is a type we are hearing about in connection with the recent cruise ship outbreak. So the key point here is that hantavirus is not a new virus. What is new is the way global travel can bring attention to rare infections very quickly. So let's look at hantavirus around the world. So globally, hantavirus infections are still considered very uncommon. The largest numbers of cases occurs in parts of Asia and Europe, where certain types of hantavirus are commonly linked to kidney disease. In the Americas, cases are fewer, but some strains can cause more severe illnesses involving the lungs and the heart. Scientists have identified about 40 different types of rodent-borne viruses within the hantavirus family, and around 22 of them are associated with human disease. But out of all of those, only one is known to be associated with person-to-person transmission, and that is the Andes virus. So that is why the Andes virus receives special attention, not because it is so common, but because it behaves differently from most other hantaviruses. So let's look a little more closely at the Andes virus. So the Andes virus infection in human, like I said, is rare. It is mainly found in parts of South America, especially Argentina and Chile. Most of what we know about Andes virus comes from clusters of disease rather than from large numbers of cases in the general population. One important outbreak occurred in Argentina between 2018 and 2019, where there were 34 confirmed cases and 11 deaths. More recently, Andes virus made international news because of the MV Hondias cruise ship outbreak this year. As of May 27th, the World Health Organization reported a total of 13 cases, including 11 confirmed and 2 probable cases and 3 deaths. So Andes virus is rare, but it is taken seriously because it can cause severe disease and because it is the only hantavirus known to sometimes spread from person to person. So let's look at how this virus can spread. And it's one of the most important things to understand. So most hantavirus infections are linked to rodents and contaminated environments. People can become exposed when infected rodents leave urine, droppings, or saliva in an area, and the material contaminates and that material contaminates dust or surfaces. This is why we often hear about hantavirus in connection with rural cabins, storage areas, barns, farms, or enclosed spaces that may have been closed up for a long period of time. The risk is higher when people sweep, clean, or disturb those areas where rodents have been present, especially if the area is poorly ventilated. But this is very important. Most hantaviruses do not spread easily from person to person, and the only strain that can cause person-to-person transmission is the Andes virus. So let's talk about what happened on the MV Hondias. So the MV Hondias was a cruise ship linked to the 2026 Andes virus outbreak. The ship had traveled from Argentina, where Andes virus is known to occur. And according to the World Health Organization, the working theory is that the first person was likely infected before boarding the ship, probably through land exposure. And after that, the person boarded the ship, and that patient was in close contact or close proximity with other individuals for a very long period of time, and that is how the current outbreak started. So, what are the signs and symptoms of hantavirus? So the early symptoms can look like many common illnesses. I think Dr. Lescott said this as well when she was talking about Ebola, and this is why these viruses can be global threats, because they are very similar to any viral illness, and so in the early stages you can't differentiate what's going on. Okay, so the early symptoms of hantavirus include fever, fatigue, body aches, headaches, chills. People can have nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, or abdominal pain. So at the beginning, very nonspecific. And in more serious cases, especially with the types found in the Americas, the illness can progress and affect the lungs and heart. That is when people may develop cough, shortness of breath, low blood pressure, fluid buildup in the lungs, kidney problems, or other severe complications. So how is hantavirus diagnosed and treated? So to diagnose hantavirus, we use a combination of the patient's symptoms, their possible exposure history, their travel history, and laboratory testing. So doctors would likely ask questions like, did the person travel to an area where hantavirus is endemic? Were they exposed to rodents? Were they exposed to a person who had a confirmed case of hantavirus or Andes virus? And the blood tests a blood test can also help us confirm the diagnosis. So in terms of treatment, okay, so before I go into treatment, we're gonna take a quick commercial break, and then we'll be back.
At The Cable, we believe in giving back because when our community thrives, we all do. That's why, as a company, we make it our mission to touch the lives of everyone in St. Kitts. We spearheaded the renovation of JNF Hospital lobby to ensure better care for all. The Cable sponsors free Wi-Fi in every community center across St. Kitts, so no one is left behind in an increasingly connected world. We stand with communities through every moment, big or small, in culture, education, youth development, and more. Y a ti también, comunidad latina. Cuenta con nosotros. Estamos con ustedes. And when it comes to customer service, we set the standard. We're just a call, click, or visit away because you matter to us. Join the company that truly cares. The Cable, more than service. We're family. Somos familia. And we're proud to always give more where it matters.
Good evening and welcome back to our show this evening. I know you guys have been glued to your TV and radio because I know these topics are what you guys would have wanted to be discussing about, and there was quite a buzz on social media and on the news about it, so we decided to just bring it to you guys and shed some more light on it so we can be more clear on what's going on in the global system of health. And I'm going to hand the show back over to Dr. Browne, who is now going to discuss the hantavirus with us more in more details.
Okay, so let's go to treatment. How do we treat hantavirus? So, like Dr. Lescott said about Ebola, for hantavirus, there's no specific cure. So treatment focuses on supportive medical care, which means that if somebody needs oxygen, then you give them oxygen. If they have a fever, then you give them something to take the fever down. So there is no cure, but some more severe cases may need medical attention, ICU admission, and so forth. So what does this mean for us here in St. Kitts and Nevis? I know that is a question that many people at home may have. So it's simple. The current risk remains low. Health officials continue to monitor the situation. There's no evidence of widespread hantavirus activity in our community. So another reassuring point is that the rodent species that carries Andes virus is not present in the Caribbean. And how reassured are you by that point, that we don't have that species of rat?
Very, 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 very reassured.
Okay, let's go to our next slide. Another reassuring thing is that the Caribbean health system, they do not wait until a disease is already in the region before they start paying attention. Regional public health agencies continue to monitor international health threats. Cruise ships are monitored before they reach Caribbean ports. This matters because cruise ships can involve passengers from many countries, shared spaces, and international travel routes. So early warning systems help the countries to receive important information quickly. So this is why public health surveillance matters. It allows countries to prepare, communicate, and respond early if something requires attention. So I have a little bit of travel advice for persons who might be going to endemic areas. So if you're traveling to a rural area, forest, cabin, mountain huts, campsites, or places that may have rodents, take basic precautions. Avoid contact with rodents and rodent drop-ins. If a cabin or enclosed space has been closed for some time, try to air it out before using it. Avoid sleeping or staying in areas where you see rodent nests, burrows, or droppings. Keep food stored safely, wash your hands regularly, and avoid close contact with anyone who has confirmed or suspected Andes virus infection in an endemic region. So these are simple precautions. They are not meant to scare people, but to help travelers make safer choices. And so, why do these viruses like hantavirus and Ebola virus, why do they matter globally? Well, it's because we live in a highly connected world. You know, diseases can spread across countries and continents more quickly than before. Another challenge is that early symptoms of many viral illnesses, like I said earlier, can look very similar to common infections like the flu. They'll have fever, body aches, headaches, nausea, and fatigue, and those symptoms are not specific. Many illnesses can start that way. And then public fear and misinformation can also spread quickly, especially online. And a lot of the time, that misinformation travels faster than the disease itself.
And the truth.
And for some viral infections, treatment options are very, very limited. So prevention, early recognition, and accurate information become very important. And this is why public health agencies monitors these situations early, even when the risk to the general public remains low. So speaking about misinformation, I wanted to include this slide just to show the general public where they can go to get reliable, credible medical information from. I know during COVID, we saw the spread of a lot of misinformation, and I had such a hard time trying to debunk them, trying to tell my family and friends, no, this is not true. So I thought that including a slide like this was very important. So guys, for information, local information about local health information, we can always go to the St. Kitts and Nevis Health Information Unit Facebook page. For regional sources, we can go to CAPHA, that is the Caribbean Public Health Agency, and PAHO, Pan American Health Organization. For international and other trusted sources, we can look at the World Health Organization, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, the Public Health Agency of Canada, the UK Health Security Agency, National Institute of Health, and the Medline Plus, which is a trusted health information website for you. And these are just some of the sites that you can go to find credible medical information, so we could stop spreading misinformation, please, guys.
So I think that brings us to the end of the hantavirus segment. And just for a brief recap, when we speak about Ebola, we are essentially speaking about the 4 strains of the disease that can affect human beings. Even though it's actually 6 Ebola strains, it's only 4 of them that actually affects humans. The one that was responsible for the 2016 Ebola outbreak in the Uganda and Democratic of Congo region would have been the Zaire strain, and that would be the only strain of Ebola that has an approved FDA vaccine. All of the others have no, how should I say, approved treatment, so to speak. There's no universal cure for the rest of them. The BDBV is the name of the strain now that is responsible for the current outbreak in Uganda and the Democratic Republic of Congo, the Bundibugyo virus, or the BDBV. And so, like I said, I don't think the medical professionals who are responsible for our border control overreacted when they decided to not have flights or passengers from a particular region enter the country. Even though like I said, I have compassion for the passengers and the inconvenience of it all. I'm not sure why or how those persons would have ended up at our shores. Maybe for future reference, maybe we can just have the plane turn back. Is that possible? But I'm just saying, it wasn't a bad call to have us err on the side of caution instead of, how should I say, we'll find out after the fact. That wouldn't have been good at all. And so that would bring us to the end of our presentation tonight. If Doctor, you have any closing words that you want to add?
Well, sure. I want to reiterate that Ebola virus and hantavirus, because of the initial symptoms are so non-specific, they can resemble any viral illness. And because you have fever, muscle ache, and headache, that does not mean you have hantavirus or Ebola virus, right? That's not the only determining factor to confirm the case. We have to think about your personal exposure, your travel history, if you were in contact with somebody who was a confirmed case, right? So we don't want the public to panic when they start to, we don't want an influx of patients going to A&E saying they have fever, they have headache, and they think they have hantavirus or anything, okay? So thank you guys so much for listening to us today, and I hope that you guys learned something, and so that you can transmit this information to your loved ones, your colleagues, because this is information that everybody should know. What do you think?
I agree, definitely speaking. So thank you, Doctor, for joining us. Like I mentioned before, she's going to be a very, how should I say, vibrant addition to the
Hopefully.
Healthwise family, and we welcome her, and we look forward to having more interesting presentations from Dr. Browne and from all of us here at ZIZ and the Medical Dental Health Association. We thank you guys for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.